Double check, make sure your project directory is set to a folder called Breakdown. Click OK. Go to File and load a scene from the Scenes folder called Breakdown4.fxs. In the previous section, we animated this caterpillar crawling by treating each item as a separate object. We animated them in unison, then offset the back from the front by a few frames. We're going to continue this by animating only one object at a time. We'll start with the head. Let's check a few settings here. Make sure your channels edit is set to all. We're scaling to fit the channel to the graph. Let's click into the Edit tab under Keyframe Editing. Make sure our spline edit is set to all channels. Click into the Animate tab. In the last section, we only laid in our extremes, and then we altered the tension on the keyframes so that the character would ease in and out from each extreme. So let's add squash and stretch to this front part of the character first. Go down to the timeline. We'll scrub to a midpoint here, and right-click on the Create button to set a keyframe, which happens to be right in the middle. Because the previous keyframe's tension was set to 1, this keyframe's tension is also set to 1. We can counter these two tensions here by setting the tension to -1. So we still maintain our ease in, ease out on our translating transition. So let's go to the middle here. Click into the 3D view, tap the A key to zoom our selection. Activate Scale, and we'll right-click on Y and Z to make them active in the 3D view. I'm going to scale him down on Y and stretch him out on Z like he's reaching for the next position. You can see it's peaked here in the 3D view because it is slowing down, speeding up, and then slowing back down. The same kind of ease we have going between our two extremes. So the transition occurs at the same speed. Let's go between the next two extremes and do the same thing. Click in the 3D view, tap the A key to center our selection. Let's right-click on the Create key to add a key to the timeline. We'll set the tension on this new key to -1. Stretch him out on Z so he's reaching for the next position, and squash him down on Y. So he reaches and then stops. Move to the next position, right in between the next two extremes. Click in the 3D view, tap the A key to center our selection. Right-click and create a keyframe. We'll scale down on Y, out on Z. We'll set the tension to -1, so we maintain our speed transitioning between one and the other. Go between the last two keyframes, click in the 3D view, center our selection. Right-click on the Create key to add a keyframe to the timeline. We'll stretch this along Z and squash him down on Y. Set the tension of this to -1 so we maintain our transitional speed. Now let's go back for a second run on the tail. Scrub back to frame 0. Let's tap the A key to center our selection and do the exact same thing. Let's move in between the first two extremes, which is right here and here. Let's highlight Scale. Right mouse click on Y and Z to make them active in the 3D view. And we'll scale down on Y and out on Z. Set the tension to -1. You'll notice I didn't have to click on the Create keyframe. When I'm in a new section on the timeline, all I have to do is just grab the bone and move it, and it'll automatically place a keyframe for me. Let's move to the next position here, in between the next two extremes. Drop in another breakdown, scale down on Y, stretch him out on Z. Set the tension to -1. Scrub between the next two extremes. Click in the 3D view. We'll center our selection. Squash him down on Y and out on Z. Set the tension to -1 so we maintain our speed transitioning from one position to the next. Because we offset this animation by a few frames, it shows up a few frames after the out point. We're going to drop in the breakdown between the two keyframes, not between the keyframe and the out point. Click in the 3D view, center our selection with the A key on the keyboard. Stretch out on Z, squash him down on Y. Set the tension to -1. So So now we zoom out here with the wheel mouse. You can see as we scrub along, he squashes and stretches like he's reaching for the next position, like he's actually crawling. Less is more, and less keyframes you can get away with adding to make the animation look the way you want it, the more animation you'll be able to do in a day. Go to File. I'm going to save this scene as Breakdown4A.fxs.